Hello, and thanks for joining. Today we're diving into a topic that challenges many of us, receiving feedback constructively. Now, whether it's from a manager, a colleague, or a client, feedback is an essential tool for our growth. But it's not always easy to hear or to handle. So I want to talk about how we ensure we approach feedback with the right mindset. How do we stay composed and make the most of it, even when it's hard to hear? I think we should start with mindset. It's easy to feel defensive when someone points out something we could do better. It's kind of a self-protective mechanism. But feedback isn't about tearing us down. It's actually an opportunity for us to grow. Approaching feedback with curiosity instead of defensiveness makes all the difference. Right now, I've been trying to work on my skills as a maker. I say a maker because there's no way anyone could call what I do woodworking, at least not yet. But it's something I'd like to accomplish someday. Anyway, besides watching YouTube videos with folks that have a lot more skill than me, every once in a while I have the opportunity to talk to someone who's a lot further along in their experience than me, asking them, what do you think of this joint? And how do you hold your chisels? And what kind of plane do you use? These are things that are interesting to me, and I'm interested in receiving their feedback about my performance so that I can genuinely get better. And that's a whole different mindset than when we're receiving feedback and we're defensive and we feel as though we're being attacked, or we convince ourselves that we're being attacked. Because the reality is that it's pretty rare the person who's providing us feedback is really seeking to attack us. Feedback is about our behavior or our work. It's not about our worth as a person. It's a tool for our improvement. They're not trying to punish us. The thing is, we don't have to agree with every single piece of feedback. But it's really important that we at least stay open to hearing it, right? That's fair. It's important that before we walk into a feedback conversation, we remind ourselves why it matters in the first place. Growth is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. We have to ask ourselves, what can I learn from this? That single question can transform our whole perspective. And then the next thing we need to do is try to make the feedback less intimidating by simply being prepared. We can review our recent performance and try to be honest with ourselves about the areas where we've excelled, but also any areas where we may have struggled, right? If we consider the potential feedback areas and we think about the conversation that is likely to occur, it'll help us feel less blindsided. We can adopt a learner's mindset, right? When we were young, we initially received feedback from our parents. And then once we started school, it was teachers and professors and coaches. And oftentimes when we received positive feedback, we thought that person was awesome. And when we received less than great feedback, we disliked that person or they were too hard on us. But the reality is that oftentimes receiving positive feedback, while inspiring and useful and necessary, is less of an opportunity for growth, right? Because it's something we're already doing good at, something that maybe we're natively good at. And there is a lot more opportunity in identifying areas that we can work on. We want to think of ourselves as the student in this conversation. The person giving the feedback is offering insights, maybe ones that we might not have otherwise noticed. We need to be prepared to listen and mentally commit to not interrupting or explaining ourselves. We don't want to be preoccupied with our rebuttal. We want to try to make good eye contact and listen, truly listen. But here's the hard part. Sometimes receiving the feedback can feel hurtful or trigger an emotional response, even despite our best efforts to go into the conversation with the right attitude. And in that situation, there are still some things we can do. First, we just need to pause before we react. Taking a deep breath and slowing down our response gives us the opportunity to process what we're hearing before reacting emotionally. We want to acknowledge our feelings, but silently. Maybe think to ourselves, I'm feeling upset about this and defensive, but I don't want to let those emotions take over this conversation. That's valid and it's fair. If the feedback is vague or feels overly harsh, it's good to seek clarity. Rather than jump into conflict, maybe ask, can you provide an example when this happened? Maybe that example clears it all up. If you can see the other person's point, it's a good idea to acknowledge it. Say something like, I see what you mean, and I will work on that. If you disagree, maybe say, I'd like to think about that and revisit this whole conversation later. Remember, if the feedback truly crosses the line, be it disrespectful or personal, it is okay to set boundaries. You can respond with something like, I appreciate the feedback, but I feel this could have been shared in a more constructive way. I would just challenge you that it's probably less common then we like to believe that that is actually the case. The person on the other end is probably authentically trying to help us and comes from a place of support. Last, I'd like to encourage you to think about the feedback long term. The work isn't done at the end of the conversation as much as we'd like it to be. We need to reflect on what we've heard. I oftentimes will take down some notes and think about how it aligns with my own personal goals or values. It's important to decide how you'll implement changes, right? Nothing ever is going to change if you don't start. And if you don't spend any time in reflection, it's unlikely that you're going to start to make changes. So go ahead, walk away, and pretty quickly thereafter, spend some time in self-reflection and planning. If the feedback points to a skill gap, look for training or mentorship opportunities to help you improve. When you have made some improvement, circle back with the person who gave you that feedback originally. Share the steps you've taken and ask for their perspective. Do you feel I've improved in this area? Don't get frustrated because they haven't come back and sought you out to tell you how great you're doing. You can take control of your own destiny. Don't lose sight of this part though. Growth takes time. You need to be patient with yourself. You need to celebrate your progress and not seek perfection too quickly. Receiving feedback is never easy, but it's a powerful catalyst for growth when we approach it with the right mindset. By preparing for the conversation and managing our emotional response, we're able to take a longer-term, action-oriented approach, and we can really turn even the most difficult of conversations into an opportunity to learn and thrive. As always, I want to thank you for tuning in. And if you found this episode helpful, I'd like to ask you to share it with a friend or a colleague. Remember, growth isn't about being perfect. It's about being better today than we were yesterday. Thanks.